Open the National Staff page on the CSC website, click the Jason Yaman hyperlink, and you'll be met by the biggest smile you've seen this academic year. Everything about the photo indicates that Jason is super excited to take on the role of executive director of this proud organization. Professionally speaking, he comes from good stock. Stints with the SoCon, the University of Maryland, and Indiana State, all peppering his resume with diverse experience, which sets the table for his leadership with CSC. Jason began his role with CSC on March 10, 2025. As of this conversation, just 6 weeks later, I am sure he's a bit bloated from drinking from that proverbial fire hose. We've got a great deal to discuss with this executive director who holds degrees from Indiana, Michigan, and South Carolina. Get comfortable. We're going to go beyond the scoreboard with Jason Yaman. In our Beyond the Scoreboard series, if you've been following, you know that from an audio standpoint, when it's a podcast, we like to keep things light, but informative at the same time. And Jason Yaman, here's the example to that. You know, a lot of kids, when they play with easy bake ovens as kids, they grow up to be chefs. Were you playing with an electric typewriter or a reporter steno pad when you were a kid thinking that one day you were going to go into communications?
Not exactly, but maybe somewhat related, Trip. For me, I always wanted to be the next like Brent Musburger, Keith Jackson. So you are looking live at Jason's townhouse as he's talking to Trip Durham, right? So that was for me the direction I wanted to take initially. I was smart enough, Trip, at age 15, 16 to realize that I was never going to have the career on the field. But how could I make athletics still my career? So, just briefly, I did my undergrad at Indiana University, majoring in sports communication and broadcast. I spent a year in Wisconsin working in, sports radio, play-by-play, et cetera. And it was doing that. The radio group that I was with was an affiliate of the Packers, Badgers, Bucks, and Brewers. And so as an affiliate radio station of all those pro properties and the Wisconsin Badgers, you had priority on interviews, you had priority on access, things of that nature. So doing that for just 1 year, that was where I kind of became curious. I wonder what it's like to work for a college athletic department. I wonder what it's like to work in the front office of a pro franchise. So I worked in broadcasting for a year, quit, did my master's at Michigan, and that's kind of then where I flipped sides over to athletic communications.
So as a follow-up to that, then it becomes almost a natural follow-up. What were some of your professional experiences along the way that really did strike and influence you to where you are today?
Yeah, I was very lucky along the way. So I go back to Michigan, which is where I'm from originally. I was a master's student there, worked as kind of a GA in Michigan's sports, media relations office at the time, working primarily like with kind of football and hockey, helping out game days and office work. First full-time job was at Division II, where interestingly enough, our starting quarterback was a guy named Matt LaFleur, now the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. So Division II, then I moved on to Indiana State for a couple of years, ultimately then to Maryland as the men's basketball contact. And it was so long ago, they were still in the ACC. I was just very fortunate to answer your question. Like each step of the way, the mentorship, the guidance that I had from whether it was the athletic director or my direct supervisor, even a number of the coaches I worked with along the way at each of those stops really kind of helped guide me and shape me. They allowed me to learn. They allowed me to make mistakes. They allowed me to kind of find my way through this profession. Certainly, again, starting out at a Division II institution, I didn't have all the answers. I had holes in my skill set, but was afforded the time and the opportunity to shore those things up as I moved up the ranks.
All of us have key lessons, nuggets that we take from other people in our journey. What are the key lessons? What are the words of wisdom, as it were, that people have imparted to you over the years?
Yeah, I think for me, especially in this industry, when it comes to like communications, was building relationships. Number one, on your campus, both within the athletic department, with the coaches and the programs that you were working with, identifying key contacts across campus, throughout campus. There were certainly times where there were big issues, major issues, and you needed help and you needed assistance from across campus. So I think building those relationships, building that equity in this industry, there will be difficult days. Certainly in communications or in an athletic department, there will be at times difficult seasons. And so having that equity built up with your coaches, with media, with your direct reports, those are things that I found invaluable to help guide me along.
And that is a lifelong proposition. You don't just build relationships in the course of an academic year. You have to maintain those relationships as you move along as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts with, like I said, putting in the time. It's my role. So like as an example, at Indiana State or at Maryland, I'm busy with the day-to-day responsibilities of being the men's basketball contact, but I still need to find the time 3-4 days a week to get over to practice, to watch the first half hour of practice, be seen, go have dinner with the team at training table when practice is over, that sort of things. Getting to truly know your athletes, your coaches, the staff, and everybody involved. Doing that helped me do a better job, frankly, of promoting and managing access and that sort of things. And look, as on the back end of that now, Trip, for me, there's a pride in that. Like as an example, a week ago, down at the Final Four, Gravis Vasquez, who was our starting point guard at Maryland 16, 17 years ago, I bump into him. He's now calling the Final Four on Westwood One's Spanish broadcasts, right? So seeing him as a freshman, and he's so different now, but you're so happy to see somebody's growth over that period of time.
Yeah, you refer to what I call casting your shadow.
Yeah.
And you have to have people see your shadow throughout the course of the day. So all of that leads to you being the executive director for CSC now. What inspired you? What motivated you? What was the inspiration for applying for the gig?
Yeah, great question. I think a couple things. Number one, there's been a lot of positive momentum through the organization the last, call it 5-6 years, between the rebrand, which I see over your shoulder, very well done. But between Trip, the rebrand, between the adjustment to like the membership and kind of going into the all-in membership, including the creative folks, social media, folks that are in video, right, going beyond the traditional, SID route, which is frankly the route that I came up in, but opening up the umbrella of the organization. So a lot of positive momentum. And then the other thing is I touched on earlier, when I got my start at Division II, I had holes in my skill set, and the resources that this organization provided really helped me shore those up and get a stable footing professionally when I began my career, almost 25 years ago.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to dive just a little bit deeper on the membership piece. Membership has increased by some 40+% since 2021. And there are so many new initiatives. I mean, this in and of itself, this forum of Beyond the Scoreboard is one such initiative. Where is it that in your early days, and I do stress early because you're like 6 weeks old. Yeah. Where is it that you're evaluating the opportunities to be able to provide more benefit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that, I talked about on my interview with the search committee is approximately, just under 4,700 members. And all the way somebody that is a football contact at an autonomy program whose team is in the college football playoff every year, all the way to somebody who is a one-person shop at, Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college, et cetera, right? And we're all under the same umbrella. And as we talked about, also bringing in the creative folks. And so what is the value proposition that we offer these widely different job descriptions? If you match up their job descriptions daily, monthly, annually, it's going to look entirely different. So how do we service that membership throughout the year? What's the value proposition that we offer? And the other thing that in these 6 weeks, conversations with the executive board is how do we get all these different groups to truly understand, and even beyond communicators, the content that your traditional communicator is producing with game notes and press releases and biographical data, et cetera. How do we marry that with the creative, doing infographics, doing videos? And beyond that, how do we work with our MMR reps and our external folks to then ultimately monetize that? which again, all of that is going to bring value back to the athletic department.
This is going to sound a bit goofy, and I don't know that I mean it to be, but when I hear you say we'd like for them to understand, to me, I think of a sales pitch, right? That you need to sell the position, market the position. Again, you're only 6 weeks in, so I'm not trying to get the answer from you, but how do you do that? How do you convey that trust and confidence to the creatives? Let's use them as the constituent base that we want you to come be a part of us.
Yeah, I think, part of that is the programming committee with CSC, the conference staff that's been in place. They've worked hard to, specific to convention, Trip, but beyond convention, even some of the year-round webinars, but like catering some of that, creative content to appeal to those folks as to, getting them to convention. And then things that we've talked about again with the board is getting all these different kind of subgroups, if you will, to understand how they can and should work with each other to support each other. That again, the SID content supplements the creative folks, and the creative folks then, as they're putting those materials out through their social media channels, website, et cetera, that's content that can be monetized with your MMR company, with your external operations teams, and really to get all these different subgroups to see how they can and should really kind of work together to support each other.
Yeah, I love the way that you articulate the vision. Lighthearted moment coming up. As a kid, let's go back to that. As a kid, what superhero did you admire the most?
Oh, wow. It'd probably have to be Batman. I mean, like all the cool gadgets. He lived in like a castle, with the bat cave in the side of the mountain. So yeah, it would have to be Batman.
The challenge with an interview like this is that you don't want to alienate any of the audience. So if there's anybody that didn't like Batman, hopefully they still like what they're hearing from you, the new ED, right?
They're allowed to be wrong, Trip. That's okay.
Funny. Considering that there are the 4,600 members or so, and everybody's got, and you mentioned it, right? Everybody's a little bit different, different budget, different staff size, all of that. You can't be everything to everybody. When you think about your personality and style as a leader, and we have these 4,600 members, how is it that you think about you being that leader and what it is you're trying to convey?
Yeah, in terms of like a leadership style to a certain extent, right? I would describe myself as a consensus builder. I am somebody that wants to hear, to your point, from all the different subgroups. I want to hear from Division I all the way through down to NAIA, junior college, or Canadian institutions, right? And I see this as something, so my previous stop, I spent the last 15 years with the Southern Conference. And something that I would share with our kind of annual interns that would rotate, even some of our younger staff members, was if you want to work in sports, go to a campus or go to a pro franchise. When you work in a conference office, when you work in a membership institution like the NCAA or CSC, certainly, you work in customer service. So that, I think, for me, Trip, also kind of informs my mindset that what we are doing as CSC is largely customer service. How do we serve those different levels and subgroups within the membership? How do we service our sponsors? How do we service our vendors? How do we work hand in hand with a group like NACTA, right? Where we're kind of shoulder to shoulder with them, putting on a convention every year. So for me, it's building a consensus, kind of building a larger shared vision, but approaching it from the standpoint of customer service.
How do you pick all of this off? You are drinking proverbially from the fire hose. I got to imagine that you feel like that you want to get it all done today, but you can't. Again, how do you pick it off? How do you decide this is the steps that we're going to take? Yeah,
for me, to that point, it's probably been something that I have leaned on, the CSC staff. It's something in my communications with the CSC board, hearing from them on kind of what they feel are the priorities. Obviously, it's no secret to anybody, just a lot of change within our industry, not just as communicators, but, the college athletics landscape as a whole the last 4 to 5 years. So what are those priorities now? How do we address them? One thing we have done, and it was kind of ongoing before I actually started, but we did a career kind of satisfaction salary survey. And so the data is closed. Our staff is working on building out the dashboards for that. So that'll be, data and information that we're going to share, obviously, with the membership later this spring. It's been about, I think, 5 years from the last time that it was done. So to your point, I think a lot of that data, a lot of the feedback that we get, what we hear from the membership can inform, to your point, what some of those priorities are, hearing for the membership, what their hot spots and what their pinch points are as we move through kind of this spring and summer and getting ready for next year.
Circling back on your leadership, where does mentoring factor into how it is that you approach your daily life?
It's huge. For me, like I said, I was very lucky looking at it now. And it's one of those things, right, with the benefit of perspective. At the time, Trip, when I'm in my late 20s, you don't know what you don't know. And this guy or this gal over here is my boss. Yeah, great, whatever. And now 25 years later, I'm like, wow, I was really lucky to have him or her in my ear at that time. So that mentorship is huge. Someone, for me, what I saw, again, and maybe with the benefit of hindsight, was someone that had a shared vision, someone that allowed everybody in the room, whether you were in communications, athletic training, marketing, compliance, whatever, that kind of built a shared vision, that heard from everybody around the table, ultimately maybe had to make the final decision, but at least I felt like my perspective, my voice was being heard. And maybe we didn't totally adopt my personal opinion or idea, but still, I know that I was able to contribute, I was able to be heard, and now I'm invested in the outcome as well as the process as we move forward as an organization.
For those CSC members that decide they want to take a look at your LinkedIn profile, you've got several academic stops. You certainly have a lot of professional stops. Taking in all that you have seen, what have you learned as being the best motivator, either for a person or a group of people? Because you've taken a lot from a lot of folks, the mentoring, the absorption. Yeah. What's a good motivator?
I think again, for me, it's been the relationships. For me, it is the mentoring. Now I'm at a stage of my career now, Trip, where now I'm, able to be a mentor, right? And in my past job recently, I've had 2 younger staff members that I've been able to mentor. And that's been rewarding for me now at this stage of my career. It's something I've told our CSC staff that, I know we have kind of a mentorship program. It's something that I want to be hands-on with to provide some of that mentorship. And as a way for me to kind of give back to the younger generation that's getting into the profession and hope to help set them up for success the way that I was almost 25 years ago.
Folks that are watching, they've got their track shoes on because we're covering a lot of ground.
That's all right.
Amount of time. Lighthearted moment again. 3 people at the dinner table. Who would you like to sit with and why?
Let me preface all this, Trip, because it's going to sound crazy, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. One more time, I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Are you a conspiracy theorist by chance?
No, but I am someone who likes to get to the bottom of things and likes answers and definitives. So that I say all that, Trip, because the 3 people we're inviting to dinner are Tupac, Billy the Kid, and DB Cooper. We're getting to the bottom of these things, right? Who actually shot Tupac? Was Billy the Kid shot by Pat Garrett, or did he resurface years later? Who's DB Cooper, right? There's all these cottage industries of folks making money, all this stuff. So we're putting a bunch of people out of business, Trip, because we're getting some straight answers.
I love that, because when I woke up this morning, I can tell you I did not see those 3 people coming.
Understood.
But I understand the backstory because there is a curiosity, right? And I think all of us in college athletics, and maybe any industry, but definitely college athletics, we are curious people.
Yes.
And when we read the tickers and the NACTA dailies, we want to know the story behind the story. And that's exactly what you just alluded to.
Yes, absolutely.
With the flux of college athletics these days, how do you approach strategy? It used to be back in the day, you could put together a 5 or 10-year plan.
Yeah.
These days, you put together a morning plan and an afternoon plan. How do you approach strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you touched on the answer, I think, Trip, which is you put something in place, but I think now, to your point, you have to revisit it maybe a lot more frequently than you had in the past. And that's something, my last stop with the Southern Conference as associate commissioner, when I work with our various coaches groups, it was something, a part of that was, look, coaches change over time, so the room dynamic is a little different every couple of years. But hey, something we adapted or an approach we took 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Do we want to stay with that, or do we want to change, and why? Right. So to your point, I would say in a larger sense, it's the idea of adapt, but don't abandon. So there's some things that we want to do differently. The times are changing, technology's changing, et cetera. But there's still some core things, and certainly as communicators, some core nuts and bolts of this job that haven't changed, really aren't going to change. But certainly embracing some new technologies and moving forward and reevaluating what we're doing at probably a more frequent clip than in the past.
You mentioned a little while ago that in your resume, you had some holes in it, your words. Did you have a hole when it came to learning how to be flexible? Because you just mentioned you've got to be adaptable in these days. If you don't have adaptability, this is an organization that probably is going to teach you pretty quickly on how to be flexible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that's part of the professional development piece that I think the organization does really, really well. And again, part of that overall value proposition of being a CSC member is having access to those tools, having access to those webinars. I think too, in a general sense, Trip, it's having a sense of connectivity, which goes beyond just college athletics. It goes beyond communicators. It's just societal almost, right? In terms of, it's easy to get behind your phone. It's easy to get behind a keyboard, but having that connectivity with other individuals that share your same responsibilities, that have many of the same challenges and pressures and constraints that you do, finding some of those shortcuts, tips, tricks, to your point, being adaptable, to being able to move forward, that how you do the job. Like I look back on it now when I started again 24, 25 years ago at Saginaw Valley State University, that job is totally different now than when I did it. And so it's come a long way between new technologies, stuff that we did back then, you really don't do anymore. So yeah, that's where I think the organization can really help the membership.
I mentioned the D1 ticker a little while ago, and it's really all the tickers from D1, right, D2, D3, NAI, right? All the driving company emails that we get. Those emails cover all types of segments within the industry. Marketing, MMRs, all of it. When we think about communications, take all the other challenges away because there are a ton of other challenges. Yeah. When you think about communications, what are the top challenges that you're finding right now?
I think there's a couple that come to mind. Number one, and I've seen this again kind of throughout my time, there's always something new in terms of a new technology to be adopted, to learn, to understand. When I first got started, it was, having to kind of run a website and figure that piece out. Later on, it was then, how do we do video streaming and live streaming? Then ultimately later on, now it's social media. We're in this age of AI. So I think it's just a kind of a nonstop changing dynamic technology wise. I think, there's concerns that I think the board and the staff and I share with, what will happen staffing wise as the health settlement and, kind of the highest level kicks in and what does that do to maybe some of our members or some of our institutions. And then the other one, Trip, which is probably not exclusive to communicators, but I think industry wide, is kind of the churn and the burnout, right? We know that this is kind of nowadays a 24/7, 365. There's nights, there's weekends, there's travel. You're kind of on the clock with cell phones and technology. At times it can be really, really hard to get away from things and unplug. So, those are, seeing a lot of really talented, hardworking, good people that for one reason or another leave the industry, right? And how do we maybe kind of stem the tide in that direction?
We've got a property that's next door to us, and obviously live to tape is how we're recording this, and they've just fired up a power saw.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know if it's coming through the microphone or not, so I apologize to all
those you're good. Out there. You're good.
And what you just described, is there a hierarchy to these challenges? Like, is this number one, but this is number 5?
I would say for me, that's a great question. I would say the longer concern for me, or maybe the more pressing concern, is kind of like the churn, the burnout. How do we attract and retain, great people that are doing the job? That, again, I can go through a list of people that at various stages when I was at Saginaw Valley, Indiana State, peers of mine that I would look across at a different school or in the conference office, he or she is fantastic. And for one reason or another, they left, right? And so again, yeah, for me, that churn, that attrition, and not losing that brain capital, out of our ranks.
You have been in this industry a while, and you're now seeing it from a different chair. What are the misconceptions that you see about this profession?
Trip, when you work in athletics, you just go to recess 9 hours a day. That's what we're doing around here. Is often what I've heard over the years, or people don't understand, and I've shared this too, and some of it too. And shame on me as a communicator for again almost 25 years. When you sit down on an airplane, like nowadays, we all put in headphones and listen to music or a CSC podcast, perhaps. But if you ever try to explain to somebody, hey, I work in college athletics. Oh, are you a coach? No. Are you an athletic director? No. Oh, well, are you an athlete? No. Right. So trying to explain to them like, well, when you see post-game press conferences and you see these media availabilities or whoever your favorite team or school is, when you follow their social media channels, we're kind of the people behind the scenes that run all of that.
And that's when they put the headphones back on and go back to their video.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly right. But no, in a general sense, some people it's like, oh, geez, that must be so fun. And yes, at times it is, but we, if you've been in it for any amount of time too, that there are at points where there is a gravity truly to what we do, and a seriousness both kind of on and off the field.
As we started to transition our time towards the end together, and this has been phenomenal. We could do this like another 2 hours, but I think everybody watching would be like, man, I am worn out.
Yeah.
Social media is not a fad. I think we've established that. It's not going away anytime soon. Who are the top 3 social media accounts that you follow?
Is that a trick question, Trip? Clearly, it's all the CSC social media channels. Come on, what are you asking? No. So, listen, as a native of Michigan, the Detroit Lions, just kind of as they've been better these past couple of years, but their Twitter X, whatever we're calling that now, their Twitter X page, they do a lot of good stuff, especially in season when the players are around. A lot of great behind the scenes stuff, kind of questions of the day type of things. I think they do a lot of really good, unique content that I just kind of try and check out through the season. And obviously, look, it helps when the team is better and winning. It's a lot more enjoyable, and obviously the players and the coaches have a lot more fun with things when the season's going well.
Do you gravitate towards more serious content, for lack of a better term, or stuff that is more lighthearted?
Oh, absolutely, the lighthearted. Trip, whoever the person behind Captain Andrew Luck is an absolute genius. So for those that maybe haven't seen that account, and now that he's back kind of active as Stanford's football general manager or assistant AD is exact title. Now that's kind of back up and active a little bit, but whoever runs that is fantastic. But no, that's kind of more of where I gravitate is kind of some of the humorous, lighthearted type stuff that you can find out there.
You're in the upstate of South Carolina. What do you prefer, mountains or coast?
Coast. Yeah.
You didn't even inhale when you answered that.
No, and listen, where I am specifically, I'm an hour from Asheville, North Carolina. It's like I'm an hour from the mountains and about 2.5, 3 hours from the coast. But no, for me, it's the coast easy.
Yeah, I'm with you top to bottom on that one. What are your interests? What are your passions outside of work, if there is an outside of work?
Yeah, whenever that time comes, right? Look, Trip, I know it doesn't show. Okay, I get it. I know it doesn't show, but I love to work out and hit the gym. And then the other piece I would say, and again, not great at it, I enjoy cooking. Again, not great at it, but good enough to make something and not burn the house down. For me, it's probably the one kind of creative outlet. I'm not good at Photoshop. I'm not good artistically and that sort of thing. But for me, cooking is kind of a one creative outlet where I'm semi-decent.
Do you want to drop a name? Do you want to tell us an experience that you found yourself in an environment and you were like, how did I get here?
Yeah, that's a great one. There's a number of them. I would share was, kind of the surreal, how did I get here moment, maybe kind of to your point. Again, I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I was very fortunate. My parents went to school at U of M. They stayed in town. So I was very lucky to grow up with football, basketball, hockey season tickets, and effectively grew up going to games on campus, fall, winter, etc. So now fast forward, I'm a graduate assistant, kind of volunteer working in the media relations office at Michigan. And the football contact, a gentleman named David Abloff, who's still there and still the football contact, somehow, some way he trusted me and gave me a key to the big house and to the press box. And so I was the person for kind of my couple of years there as a GA. For a noon kickoff trip, I was in the press box at 7:30 in the morning, literally turning the lights on in the press box. There was this this broomstick with a hook taped onto it, and I'm opening all the windows in the place. I'm up on the photo deck. And so to be someone that, went to so many games as a fan and now almost literally opening the press box at, 7 a.m. for a noon kick, that was kind of one of those, surreal type of things for me.
And the quietness before 100,000 plus people roll in, and it's like your stadium, right?
Absolutely. It was, like I said, that was kind of a surreal thing to be kind of the first person in there opening up the place 5-6 hours before a game.
I'm an event facilities geek, so that is so cool for me. Last question. Is there a question that you thought I would ask that I didn't? Is there something that you wanted to convey that I didn't give you the chance to do?
I'll tell you what, we'll do it this way, Trip. I'll give you 3 of them and let you pick. It's dealer's choice. It's your interview. Okay. First responsibility in media relations, your favorite kind of sports moment or best game you were at. And then let's go with, because again, kind of the first half of my career, give or take, was on campus. What do you miss about being campus? But dealer's choice, your call.
I like the last one because I haven't been on campus for 16 years now, and I missed the chance to darken people's doorways and to have that collaborative one-on-one. So I'm not putting answers into your mouth, but let's go with that one.
Yeah, I like darken the doorway. I hadn't heard that before. That's good. I'm gonna steal that. I would say the thing I miss the most about being on campus, both really at all 3 stops for me, or all the stops between Michigan, Saginaw Valley, Indiana State, University, Maryland, you literally, drive up and your office is in a basketball arena. So just subconsciously, right away pulling up every day that you work in sports. My last 15 years at the Southern Conference, you pull up to an office park. And for the last 6 weeks, I roll over to my dining room table with CSC as I'm waiting for my kind of home office to be built out upstairs. So that subconscious of I work in athletics as I'm driving to a basketball arena every day. But more than that, Trip, for me, and again, this is someone who was a direct contact with football and basketball teams, is the direct contact with the athletes. And in particular, being in the locker room after a big win, especially kind of when you're on the road, because you have that bus ride or that plane flight home later that day, that's you can't replicate that feeling no matter what. And so the direct contact with the athletes and coaches and being a part of a big win and coming home following that is something that, again, you just can't replicate that.
Well, Jason, thanks for the time. Good luck. And we all wish you the best of a fruitful career as you are now sitting in the big chair leading what is an amazing organization.
Absolutely. Trip, I appreciate your time, the thoughtful conversation and questions today.